My name is Jessy. I am 29 years old. I live in a small city. I have a simple life. For a long time, I felt invisible in my own home. My husband's name is Alex. We met when we were both 21. He was kind, funny, and always wanted to be near me. He called me every day. He brought me food when I was tired. He made me feel like I was the only person in his world. When he looked at me, I felt seen. I felt loved. I married him after 1 year. Before we continue with the story, I'd love to hear from you. Which part of the world are you listening from today? Leave a comment below, and if this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more simple and emotional English stories. The first few years were good. We had many happy days. We cooked together. We watched movies. We went for walks in the evening. We laughed a lot. I thought, this is the man I will grow old with. But slowly, everything started to change. At first, I did not notice. He still smiled. He still said, "Good morning." But the way he looked at me was different. His eyes were not warm. His smile was not full. He looked at his phone more than at my face. He was always busy. I told myself, maybe he is tired. Maybe work is hard. But deep inside, I started to feel something was wrong. I tried to talk to him. I asked, "Are you okay?" He said, "I'm fine." I asked, "Do you want to go out this weekend?" He said, "I'm tired." I asked, "Do you still love me?" He smiled a little and said, "Of course." But the smile did not reach his eyes. Every day felt colder. We ate in silence. We walked past each other like strangers. Sometimes I said something funny, hoping he would laugh. He didn't. Sometimes I wore a dress he once loved. He didn't notice. I cooked his favorite food. He said, "Thanks," but kept looking at his phone. I started to feel small. I started to feel like a ghost in my own home. I watched his face when he looked at others. He smiled with them. He listened to them. But when he looked at me, his eyes were blank. Empty. It was like I wasn't there. One evening, I stood in front of him and said, "Alex, do you see me?" He looked confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I live here with you," I said. "But I feel like I don't exist to you anymore." He laughed a little. "You're overthinking," he said. "I'm just tired." I turned away and walked to the kitchen. I didn't cry. I just felt tired too. Tired of being unseen. My friend Emily noticed something was wrong. We met at the park one afternoon. She looked at me and said, "Jessy, you look sad." I didn't want to talk about it. But the tears came anyway. I told her everything. Emily took my hand and said, you don't deserve to feel this way. You are not invisible. Her words touched my heart. That night, I looked in the mirror. My face looked older. My eyes looked tired. I asked myself, where did I go? Where is the Jessy who used to smile? I didn't know the answer. But I knew I had to find her again. Alex did not ask me why I was quiet. He did not notice when I started sleeping late. He did not ask why I stopped cooking. He did not ask why I didn't laugh anymore. I waited. I hoped he would notice. But he didn't. One morning, I sat with Emily again. What should I do? I asked her. She said something simple. Start doing things for you. Not for him. For you. Her words stayed in my mind. That evening, I went for a walk alone. I watched the sky. I felt the wind. I listened to the birds. I felt something move inside me. A small feeling. Like light in a dark room. I started doing small things I liked. I listened to music while drinking tea. I watched a movie by myself. I called my sister and laughed with her. I read old messages from friends and smiled. Slowly, I felt like I was coming back. But Alex didn't ask. He didn't wonder why I seemed different. It hurt. But I didn't stop. I kept doing things for myself. I started going to a small art class with Emily. We painted simple things, flowers, trees, faces. I was not good at it. But I felt happy. In that class, I met other women. One woman said, "Your painting has so much emotion." I smiled. It had been a long time since someone noticed me. One day, Emily looked at me and said, "You look like yourself again." And I felt it too. I was still sad. But I was stronger now. I started to see my value again. Alex still didn't see me. But for the first time in a long time, I saw myself. I started waking up before the sun. Not because I had to, but because I wanted quiet time. I made tea for myself and sat near the window. The street was still, the sky soft and pink. I watched people pass by slowly. Some were on bikes. Some were walking their dogs. Some looked tired like I used to. It became my new morning habit. I stopped waiting for Alex to ask me to join him for anything. He never did. I stopped asking him too. We became two people in one house but in two different worlds. He was always on his phone or laptop. I was always with my thoughts. Emily kept calling me, making sure I didn't fall back into silence. She was the only person who really asked how I was doing and waited for an honest answer. One day she said, "Jessy, you are stronger than you think. You just forgot it for a while." I smiled when she said that, but deep inside, her words made me cry a little. Not from pain, but because they reminded me of the girl I used to be. I missed her so much. I missed the girl who laughed out loud and danced in the kitchen and made silly faces in the mirror. I missed the Jessy who didn't need someone else's eyes to feel real. I remember the day I finally realized Alex was never coming back. Not physically, of course. He was still living in the house. He still left his socks on the floor and left the lights on in the bathroom. But the man who once loved me, once held my face and said I was his world, that man had gone somewhere I couldn't follow. I had cooked dinner that evening. A small meal, nothing special, but I had taken care with it. I set the table, even placed a candle in the middle. I waited. He came home late. He walked in, didn't look at the table, and said, "I already ate with my friends." He didn't even ask why the food was there. He didn't ask if I wanted company. He just walked to the bedroom and shut the door. I sat alone at the table. I looked at the plate, then at the candle. The flame moved softly, like it was alive, like it noticed me. But the man I married didn't. I sat there for a long time, not crying, not even angry. Just empty. That was when I knew something had ended. Not with words, not with a fight. But in silence. That kind of ending is worse because no one sees it happen. After that night, I stopped trying. Not because I gave up on love, but because I gave up on begging for it. I started going to the art class twice a week. Emily picked me up sometimes, and sometimes I walked alone. I liked the walking part. It gave me space to think. The class was full of women with different stories. Some were older, some younger, but all of us came there for the same reason, to feel something again. The teacher, a kind woman named Clara, once told us, "Paint like no one is watching." That line stayed with me. Maybe that was what I needed to do in life too. Live like no one is watching. Especially when the one person I wanted to see me never did. There was one day in class when I painted a woman sitting under a tree. She was small in the picture, and the tree was big. The sky was heavy with dark clouds. I didn't think much of it. But when Clara saw it, she stood next to me for a long time. She didn't say anything at first. Then she said, "This feels like a quiet sadness." I looked at the painting and suddenly I felt it too. That woman under the tree was me. Alone but still there. Sad but still strong enough to sit through the storm. At home, Alex didn't notice the change in me. He didn't notice that I didn't wait for him anymore. That I didn't try to make conversation. That I no longer cared if he said good morning or not. He didn't ask why I went out twice a week. He didn't ask who I was meeting. I think a part of him liked that I stopped asking questions too. Maybe he thought life was easier this way. But what kind of life is that, when two people live side by side like shadows? One evening, Emily and I stayed late after class. We sat outside with paper cups of tea. She looked at me and said, "I want to ask you something, but only if you're ready." I nodded. "Are you still in love with him?" I didn't speak for a while. I looked up at the night sky. It was clear, full of stars. I said, "I don't know. Maybe I still love the man he used to be. But I don't know who he is now. And I don't think he knows who I am either." Emily nodded, not pushing me. That's what I loved about her. She never pushed, only held space. Days passed. Weeks too. I kept painting. I started reading again, something I hadn't done in years. I even started helping Clara with setting up the room before class. She told me I was gentle, but she could feel strength in me. I didn't know what to say to that. But it made me feel good. It made me feel seen. Then one Saturday, something strange happened. Alex was in the kitchen, drinking coffee. I walked in to get some water. He looked at me for a moment and said, "You seem different." I was surprised. It was the first time in a long time he had said something about me. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled a little. He looked at me again, longer this time. "Are you okay?" he asked. I wanted to laugh. After all these months, now he was asking. "I'm fine," I said simply. He nodded and went back to his phone. That was it. That was the moment I truly understood. Even when I stood right in front of him, even when I smiled, even when I looked more alive than before, he couldn't really see me. He only saw a version of me he once knew. Not the woman I was becoming. Not the woman who was learning to stand tall again. That night, I wrote a small message to myself in my phone. I wrote, "You are here. You are real. You matter." I didn't need anyone else to say it. I believed it. I was no longer that ghost walking around my house. I was Jessy. The woman who loved deeply. The woman who broke quietly. And the woman who, piece by piece, was putting herself back together. One Sunday morning, I woke up to the sound of birds outside. The window was half open. A soft breeze moved the curtains. I sat up slowly. Alex was still asleep beside me. His back was to me, like always now. I watched the light fall on the wall and felt a strange calm in my chest. There was no anger, no fear. Just a quiet voice inside saying, "It's time." I didn't know exactly what it meant yet, but I listened to it. I got up, made tea, and sat with my notebook. Not to write poems or sad thoughts. Just to plan my week. Emily and I were thinking about joining a new group that met at the library every Thursday. It was a small circle of women who talked about life and healing. I wasn't sure if I wanted to speak, but I liked the idea of being around people who were honest. People who didn't pretend everything was fine. At lunch, Alex came to the kitchen and asked, "Are you going out again today?" I said, "Yes, I'm meeting Emily." He just nodded and reached for the fridge. That was it. No more questions. No curiosity. But this time, it didn't make me sad. It made me sure. I didn't want to live in this silence forever. I didn't want a life where I had to shrink myself just to keep peace. Emily picked me up that afternoon. We drove in silence for a while, then she asked, "Are you ready to leave him?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window, watching the houses pass by. I thought about the early days of our love. The way Alex used to hold my hand like it was something precious. How his face used to light up when he saw me. How I used to feel safe in his arms. But that love was gone. And I could not keep living in the past. "I don't know if I'm ready," I finally said. "But I know I can't stay like this." Emily didn't say anything. She just reached out and held my hand for a moment. And that was enough. Someone still cared. Someone still saw me. At the meeting, I sat in a small circle with 7 women. One of them shared how she left a long marriage after 20 years. Another spoke about growing up feeling invisible. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and said, "My name is Jessy. I feel like I disappeared inside my own home." My voice shook a little, but no one judged me. They listened with open hearts. I told them how I once felt full of life and how slowly, piece by piece, I became small. I said, "I want to find myself again." That meeting changed something in me. I went home and looked at the apartment with new eyes. It was our home, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. I had painted the walls. I had picked the curtains. I had cooked in the kitchen for years. But everything felt like it belonged to someone else now. I was just passing through. That night, I lay awake thinking. I looked at Alex beside me. He was scrolling on his phone, like always. I said, "Do you ever think about us?" He looked at me for a second and said, "What do you mean?" I said, "About how we used to be. About how far we are now." He shrugged. "We're just busy. Life changes." Then he went back to his phone. I turned my face away and closed my eyes. My heart didn't even ache. It just felt tired. I knew then that I had already started to leave him. Not with my feet, but with my soul. The real goodbye had begun the day I stopped needing his attention to feel alive. A few days later, I visited my sister Mia. She lived across town and always welcomed me with open arms. I hadn't told her everything, but she could sense my pain. She said, "Jess, you don't have to stay where you're not seen. You don't have to live in the shadows." I cried in her arms that day. It was the kind of cry that comes when someone finally says out loud what your heart has been trying to whisper for so long. That week, I made small changes. I cleaned out my closet and gave away things I didn't wear. I packed a small bag with my favorite clothes. I didn't tell Alex. I wasn't ready yet. But I needed to feel like I had control. Like I had a way out, even if I didn't take it right away. I needed to feel like I had choices again. Emily noticed the change in me. "You're lighter," she said one afternoon. "Like something heavy has been taken off your shoulders." I smiled. Maybe I finally realized I deserve more than being half-loved. One evening, I came home from the meeting and found Alex watching a movie. I stood in the doorway and said, "Can we talk?" He paused the movie and looked at me. I sat down and said, "I don't think this is working." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "I mean us. This silence. This distance. I can't do it anymore." He looked confused, maybe even surprised. "I thought we were okay," he said. I looked into his eyes. "You don't see me anymore. You haven't for a long time. And I'm tired of being invisible." He didn't speak for a while. Then he said, "I didn't know you felt that way." I smiled sadly. "That's the problem, Alex. You didn't ask." I stood up and walked to the bedroom. I lay on the bed and let the tears come. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of truth. For the first time, I had spoken my heart. And no matter what happened next, I knew I had started to choose myself. The next morning, the house was quiet. I made tea and sat near the window like always. But this time, something was different. There was a new peace inside me. Not because everything was okay, but because I had finally said the truth. I had finally spoken out loud what I had carried in silence for so long. Alex didn't say much that day. He stayed in the bedroom most of the time. Maybe he was thinking. Maybe he was confused. I didn't know. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to fix it. I didn't run after his feelings. I didn't ask him what he wanted. I gave him space, but more than that, I gave myself freedom. I went to the art class in the afternoon. Clara smiled when she saw me. "Your eyes look clear today," she said. I smiled back. That day, I painted a woman standing at a train station. She had a small bag and a strong look on her face. She wasn't running away. She was walking towards something new. Clara stood behind me quietly. "That's a powerful piece," she said. "Where is she going?" I looked at the painting and whispered, "Somewhere she's finally seen." When I got home, Alex was sitting at the table. He looked up and said, "Can we talk?" I sat down. He said, "I didn't know you were so unhappy." I nodded. "Because you never asked," I said. He looked down. "I guess I got too busy with work, with life. I thought things were just normal." I looked at him and said softly, "Normal shouldn't feel this lonely." He didn't argue. He didn't get angry. He just looked sad. Then he asked, "Do you want to fix this?" I paused. It was a big question. But I had already asked myself many times before. I said, "I wanted that for a long time. I gave everything to this love. But I can't be the only one trying." He stayed quiet. I continued, "I don't hate you. But I need to love myself too." I forgot how to do that for a long time. He nodded slowly. "So, what now?" he asked. I looked him in the eyes. "I think I need some time away. Maybe we both do. To see clearly. To feel what's real." That evening, I packed a small bag. Not because I was running away. But because I was walking towards something I needed: space, peace, and my own voice. I stayed at my sister Mia's place. She gave me her guest room and a warm hug. "Take all the time you need," she said. Days passed. I woke up feeling lighter each morning. I took walks with Mia. We cooked simple meals. We laughed about childhood stories. I felt myself coming back to life in small ways. I still thought about Alex. I still felt the pain. But it was softer now. It didn't cut so deep. One evening, I got a message from Emily. She had started a new art group for women like us. Women learning to love again, starting with themselves. She asked if I wanted to help her lead it. I said yes. It felt good to say yes to something new, something that didn't ask me to shrink or hide. A week later, I met Alex for coffee. We sat outside. The air was cool. He looked tired, but calmer. "I've been thinking," he said. "About how I treated you. About how I stopped seeing you." I listened quietly. "I was wrong," he said. "I let our love fade and didn't even notice." I said nothing for a while. Then I said, "Thank you for saying that." He looked up. "I want to change, Jessy. I want to do better. I don't want to lose you." I believed he meant it. But sometimes, love isn't enough. Sometimes, time breaks things too far. And sometimes, the person you become no longer fits the place you left behind. "I still care about you," I said. "But I don't think I can come back to who I was. I've changed. I've grown. And I can't lose myself again." He nodded slowly. "I understand," he said. "I just wish I had seen you sooner." We both sat there for a while, not speaking. It wasn't a happy ending. But it was an honest one. And for me, that was enough. I moved into a small apartment a few weeks later. It was simple, but it was mine. I painted one wall blue. I placed my favorite cup on the kitchen shelf. I bought flowers once a week and put them near the window. I started teaching art to children on weekends. Their laughter filled the room with joy. Emily and I led the new women's group together. We shared our stories. We listened. We healed. Some days were still hard. But I was no longer invisible. I was no longer waiting to be seen. One morning, I looked in the mirror. I saw my face, my eyes, my smile. I touched the glass and said, "You are here. You are real. And you are enough." And that was the end of one story, and the beginning of another. I hope you have enjoyed the story. Like and comment if you want to hear more soon.